Team, behind me are a few individuals there. That's the original Turn and Burn, the folks that help make America. But you know what? I'm very proud of what you, the Mean Green Machine, are doing in Minneapolis right now, just like you've done it across the United States over these past tough 9 months. And I want you to know that you're the modern day equivalent. Turn and Burn. Makes me very proud. I also want you to know that I've got your back now and always. I love you, I support you, and I salute you.
Hey folks, our ICE agents are getting a lot of hate right now just for doing our job. Please take a moment to show us your support to help boost our morale. God bless you.
Good morning, all. Happy Thursday. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. Hey, I had to get some of those things in this morning because those are all important videos to play right now. I think it's right now. I now that I think about it, I didn't look to see if it was Eastern or Central time. We have Tom Homan supposedly giving a press conference, and I can't remember what time it was. It was 8 o'clock. I don't know if it was Eastern or Central. If any of you know what he has to say, please let me know. I have no way to check up on that, but I bet it is absolutely fantastic. We're of course going to be talking about that. You know, there's new video that's been released of Alex Pretti in that prior altercation. We knew a prior altercation had happened with federal agents, but we didn't know we knew what the details were on paper. We didn't see it play out. And it's kind of funny, and we'll get into this a little bit in a few minutes when we start talking about it. Good morning, Karen. Good morning, Rob. Is that people are going crazy. Oh, it's AI, it's AI, it's AI. The family, Pretty's family, has stated it's not AI. They have verified the video and they said, yes, that is Alex. So it has been confirmed. It's not AI. It is a real video, which I always knew it was. And we're going to get into all of that here in just a couple moments. Good morning, Carl. Lots to talk about today. Unfortunately, I will not be here tomorrow. I just want to throw that out there. I'll remind it again at the end of the show. I thought I was going to have a full week this week, but as I kind of said yesterday, I've got a really big project that I'm working on. And unfortunately, I'll be working on it till about 4 in the morning. So I will not have I don't sleep much as it is, but that's kind of pushing the time limits a little close. So I will not, unfortunately, be available tomorrow. So this is kind of our Friday. I should have came up with some fun Friday stuff. Good morning, Glesna. I hope you're staying warm up there in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. You guys have had it really hard. And I'll tell you, speaking of, there's still hundreds of thousands of people without power. You know, have you seen some of the videos of Nashville, Oxford, Mississippi? It's really bad out that way. I just heard a story about a bunch of linemen heading down to Texas. They had a lot of power outages out there in different parts of Texas, but man, it's crazy. You know, when you see that ice, we got really lucky in my area. We got a lot of snow. If I look out the window right now, the snow has not budged. You know, there's still, I think in the end we got 15 inches of snow is what it totaled to be. And it's a lot of snow, but you know, it hasn't been overly cold. You know, I walk back and forth to the chicken coop and I haven't been freezing cold or anything like that. But, you know, I guess because the wind finally died down, you know, for a little while, the wind was a little bit crazy, but man, I feel for those people who are without power. You know, I told you guys that story about a family that was burning their furniture to stay warm. And there's probably a lot more of that, you know, that we're not even aware of. When you get these extreme temperatures and all of that ice and it brings the trees down on top of the power lines, that can be a very lengthy repair. And, you know, definitely say a prayer for those linemen. You know, every time we have one of these big ice storms, we usually lose a lineman because of something happening, some type of accident. And hoping and praying that doesn't happen this time around. But that's a very serious job. And we certainly owe those people, because if it weren't for them, man, we'd definitely all be sitting around in the dark. So I wanted to throw that out there. Again, Tom Homan talking today. You know, the situation in Minneapolis, it's not really gotten any better. I haven't been watching the videos as much as I was because it's kind of all the same stuff. They're out impeding law enforcement during the day. At night, they're at the hotels, you know, trying to harass everyone. And the Minneapolis Police Department has been doing a good job of going out to the hotels and rounding them up. From what I understand, though, the Minneapolis Police Department is still not assisting ICE well, it would have been Border Patrol and Customs Protection, but they're gone now from Minneapolis. I think, good morning, Stacy. I think there's going to be a lot that's going to happen in the next week because there's a lot of tension. We have Bovino. Bovino, like I said yesterday, is expected to retire soon. He is back in California. He's still running, ICE operations and Border Patrol and different things in that region. So he's still busy. He's still working. He's not down and out by any means. You saw the message he sent out to what he calls the Green Machine in Minneapolis, just kind of assuring them that they're still doing a great job. He's still there. He's not done. That's for sure. And I'll tell you, he deserves a retirement. Like I said yesterday, he's been in the business for a very long time. Now, what's interesting about this week is that, as we know, Tom Homan came to Minneapolis. He spoke with Governor Walz. He spoke with Mayor Frey. And it seemed like Governor Walz was, willing to negotiate. He activated the Minneapolis police and they were allowed to at least go out and make these arrests at the hotels. However, Mayor Frey is standing firm. He said under no circumstances does he want his officers to help the ICE agents. He doesn't want to help these federal investigations. He's continuing to compare them to Nazis. He claims that they're still going to protect the citizens of Minneapolis, citizens, including, of course, the people who are violent criminals who are there illegally. And it's so crazy to me because, I think on my Facebook page, I think I was looking yesterday because I was trying to get an idea of how many people come through my page with complete lack of common sense. And I think yesterday I get about 1 million to 2 million views a day, not necessarily on the show. The show's been averaging about 4,000 or 5,000 views, but at the end of the day or within a couple days. But as far as comments and things and people coming through my page, yesterday it was like 23 million. It's been growing like 1 million a day, and people are coming through and leaving comments. I think I saw yesterday like 1.2 million comments, on my various posts. And I'll tell you what, a good percentage of those comments are liberals. They are people who are on that, I think most of them on that very far left spectrum that have no common sense. So there's a lot of people out in this world with no common sense. And some of the things that I see these people saying show me that they really just have no idea what the law is, and they have no idea what's going on. There was even somebody who commented on the show the other day in the comment line who was talking about, oh, I'm an attorney. You obviously don't know the law. Well, I will tell you and her again that if you come to a protest and you're carrying your weapon, that's illegal for a number of reasons. One, because the DHS said it is. You cannot bring a weapon to a protest, a political protest demonstration. And B, if you come to a protest and you have your weapon, even if it is legal, you have to have your identification. You have to have your concealed carry permit, especially in the city of Minneapolis. So people can tell you, well, that's not true, but it is true. And, it is against the law to impede an investigation, to obstruct officers who are carrying out lawful orders. But yet these people continue to do it, and yet they still just don't understand. And that's why today I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between common sense and people just being stupid. Or is it entitlement? I would really like to know, because I see a lot of both going on. I see people who just simply don't get it. And then, of course, there's a lot of people who are they're just not going to accept the truth no matter what. We're going to show that video, in a few minutes, of Alex Pretti, the one where it happened on January 13th, 11 days prior to the altercation in which he was killed. But I'll tell you what, as long as people continue to believe that it's okay to impede an investigation, that it's okay to dox ICE officers, it's okay to, pull your vehicle in front of them when they're conducting a lawful operation. And of course, there's that, they want to say, well, it's not lawful because what? Because Governor Walz and Mayor Frey said it's not, because those two are inciting violence. It doesn't matter what those two say. It is absolutely against the law. I mean, think about that. If you yourself, if you're at your home, okay, and the SWAT team shows up, or somebody's serving a warrant, let's say the FBI, at the house next door to you, if you go over there and you insert yourself and you're trying to stop them from going to the door, or let's say you pull your vehicle out and you put it in your neighbor's driveway so they can't get in, or you're out there with your whistle in front of your neighbor's house that they're trying to serve this warrant on, what do you think is going to happen to you? We all know you can't do that, right? So why do people think when they're at a protest that it's somehow okay? I don't understand it. And I don't care what anyone says. I really don't care what anyone says. The fact is when you go and you're join one of these signal groups where you're following ICE and telling everybody where ICE is, this is a criminal investigation. It puts the lives of officers at risk. You are a domestic terrorist. So many people have argued that. They're like, oh, that's what they have every right to have this signal chat group. No, you don't. You absolutely do not have every right to dox police officers, to follow police officers from one investigation to another. And I honestly think that the federal officers have actually been very nice to a lot of these people. In fact, you're going to see this video in a minute, the new video with Alex Pretti. You're going to see, they didn't arrest him. He kicked out their taillight. He spit on their vehicle. He was tussling with them. Yet they didn't arrest him because they were in the middle of an investigation. They were literally chasing someone when he impeded in their investigation. Never is that allowed. We all know that if you get in the middle of law enforcement officers while they are conducting, let's say, a search warrant, while the SWAT team is there, while they're serving a war, whatever the situation might be, even if they're just conducting a traffic stop, could you imagine driving down the road and you see a police officer pulling someone over for speeding and you stop your car and you walk up and you try to get between the officer and the person in the car and start blowing your whistle and acting all crazy? Guess what's going to happen? You're for sure going to go to jail. And then if you do this and you're armed, you're probably going to die. I don't know why so many people, and I hate it that Alex Pretti died. I really do. I hate it that Renee Good died. I don't want to see anyone die. I've lost family members, and I know how hard it is for parents to lose a child or children to lose a parent or family members to lose their loved one. I totally get it. I don't want to see anyone die. But these people continue to place themselves in places they shouldn't be. And I don't care what anyone has to say. You can disagree with me all you want. Alex Pretti was not executed. He was not executed. He came to a protest. He obstructed with law enforcement. He got between them and something they were trying to do. And he had a weapon. The weapon was exposed. And it's unfortunate, but sometimes these things happen. Mary, yes. Monkey see, monkey do. Mob mentality. You got that right. And let's see, Gloria, I just get frustrated with comments that don't help encourage healthy dialogue. Well, of course. And let's see here. And the thing is, Lori, is it's hard to have healthy dialogue when you have people who just insist that they have the right to go out and impede and obstruct these investigations. They just do not get it. They'll say, well, he had every right to have his weapon. Not if he plans on fighting with police. He didn't have his weapon because he was trying to protect himself against protesters. He had his weapon because he wanted to fight police. And when you see this video in a minute, you're going to see it more than ever. I'm just trying to grab these comments. I'm going to have to switch laptops. This laptop, it's a MacBook Pro, and I hate it. I mean, I hate this laptop. When I was on my prior shows, we always used a MacBook. So I always thought MacBooks were the best to use for a podcast. I'm learning that is just not the case. I'm going to go out and buy a new laptop this weekend so that I can scroll a little bit easier, because this MacBook, I mean, it is so picky about every little thing. Well, good morning, Nancy. Good morning, Mary. Carl says people confuse laws because they are not consistent across states. Also true. And I would advise anyone, if you're going out to violently protest, look up the laws in your area. But when it comes to Alex Pretti or even Renee Good, we just know it's common sense. You don't block law enforcement. You don't close the road ahead of them. You just don't do it. And you certainly don't use your vehicle as a weapon. And you certainly do not carry a gun and tussle with police officers. If you're going to go out and you're going to be a legal observer, which is so many people said that Alex Pretti was a legal observer. We know that he's not, and that's being proven more to us each day. But if you are one of those people who go out and you're a legal observer, stay on the outskirts. Don't get in the middle of things. just do not insert yourself. I think the problem with Alex Pretti is he had just had so much anger. And I get it. There's a lot of angry people out there. And trust me, I was really angry on January 6th. I'm sure a lot of you were. But at the same time, as angry as I was that things were going under the Biden administration, never one time did I arm myself and head out to a protest. That's the difference between common sense and non-common sense. Oh, here we go. Let's see, Michael Bond. Stop spreading lies. Oh, we're such liars here. He was pepper sprayed, tackled to the ground by 5 men, pistol whipped in the face. I didn't see him pistol whipped in the face. Disarmed and then shot. Injustice and illegal. Also, did you forget the Republicans on J6 at the Capitol actually holding their ARs in hand? And those people were called heroes by Trump. But when Democrats have weapons holstered, they're brandished domestic terrorists. How does that make sense? Please actually try and explain this, because he was illegally gunned down and the government is actively lying about it. And Michael says, you actually did pronounce my name right. Thanks for that. Well, Michael, I do my best. Here's the thing, Michael. And I actually appreciate your comment, because you know what? You're actually you're here and you're talking about it. And the fact is that had officers that day had the luxury of watching a video afterwards, I can guarantee you that since that time, they say, man, I wish we didn't react that way. We didn't have to kill this guy. But here's the thing, when you go and you watch the slow motion video, which Michael, I'm assuming that you have, when you go and you watch the slow motion video, you can see how fast things happened. And now we know, as the investigation continues, that from the time that first officer yelled gun, it was 5 seconds before the first shot was fired. And now here, there's still an investigation ongoing of whether or not the officer that took the gun out of Pretty's holster, whether it accidentally discharged. I know you probably weren't here. We talked about that on the show on Monday. That's true. They're investigating whether or not that happened. Last night, I don't have the video here to save. I can't say, for whatever reason, I can't save all videos to be able to play them for you. But there were videos that I found yesterday from, remember the lady everybody saw in the red or the pink? Well, that woman, and I don't know her name, she has been posting the videos online. I've not seen them on Facebook yet, but they are out there, and it's the full video that she took. And some people have taken that and they've broke it into sections. And I've like I said, I saved the video, but I don't have any way to load it up to play it. There's probably a way to do that. I don't know how to do it. But in this video, it's extremely graphic, quite honestly, because it's slow motion. You can see where Pretti was shot. You can see the blood. There's a lot of things you can see in that video that wouldn't be suitable, really, to play on social media, quite honestly. However, if you watch that video, it's a good angle. They slow it down, and you can kind of see what happened. And I absolutely wish things didn't happen this way. Of course I do. But like I said, Michael, if you come to a protest and you're armed, and he was not legally armed, he was not carrying his concealed carry permit, he was not carrying identification, that makes it illegal for him to be carrying his weapon. In Minneapolis, you can only carry a weapon if you have a concealed carry permit and if you have your identification, which he did not. And now I know, though, that none of that really matters, quite honestly, because a life was lost. And if you watch the video, it's very difficult to watch, and it really puts some humanity into the situation. And I wish I could have played for that video for you guys. I don't know if there's a way for me to send it to you all privately or not, but I know I can't play it here. But either way, there's a slow motion area where somebody took a little section of it and slowed it down, and it really showed more than what I had seen before. But it actually just solidified the fact that I realized that police really had no choice. What happened, it happened so fast that the one officer kind of bends down. We've all seen that part. He takes the weapon out and he hurries up and takes off. That was mistake number one. That shouldn't have happened that way. There's no question about it. That should not have happened that way. I'm not a police officer. I don't know their rules and regulations, but I wish there was a way that officer, could have said, hey, I got the gun or something, or, I don't know, something to where he didn't just take the gun and take off running. I don't know why he did that. And I'm sure that's under investigation. I'm sure he's probably going to have a good talking to, or worse, over his actions. And some of those who work in law enforcement, you're, welcome to comment on it. But here's the thing is when you see the video play out in slow motion, he does remove the gun. But what happens is that there's a point where Alex starts to get up. It was almost like the gun was removed. Somebody yelled gun. All the officers kind of dispersed a little bit. They all got up off the ground. And then you see, and I don't know if that was, I think that was after that first sound, that first shot we hear. I don't know what that shot was. But you see at the same time as that shot is occurring, Alex is reaching back. Now, he does grab something. I don't know what he grabs. I have no idea. Maybe it was a cell phone. It was a black object, but he reaches back to where his holster is. And at the same time he's reaching back to the holster is when he gets shot. And he grabs something. I've slowed that video down 1,000 times. You should see my phone. I've taken so many still photos trying to figure out what he had. Now we'll eventually find out during the investigation. But he had something, I don't think it was a gun. I don't know what he had. But either way, he did reach back. And I'm not saying he reached back to shoot officers. We will never know what was on his mind. Most likely, the fear of dying was on his mind. But he did reach back. And I'm guessing that he probably felt the officer take his weapon out, is what I'm guessing. But either way, he reached back. And, in the craziness of the situation, and when you realize this happens in just under a minute, it all takes place under a minute. Think how fast a minute is, and it's all simultaneously. Somebody yelled, they're tussling around, which is a dangerous situation anyway. It's possible these officers knew him. We don't know that yet, but it's certainly possible. And they may have already known he was armed. In one of the video I'm going to show you in a few minutes, you can see that he has a weapon. So chances are they probably saw his weapon at that time. But this time's a little bit different. And the reason why is because somebody yelled gun. And when an officer yells gun, that is a cue for the other officers to use lethal force. We may not agree with it, but that's how it is. And Michael says that first shot looked like an accidental discharge by the officer who disarmed him. Here's the thing. I don't know, because in the slow motion video I saw yesterday, when it's timed with the sound of the shots, if that's the case, and I watched it 1,000 times, when that officer in the gray takes the weapon, he turns around and starts to walk away, that's when the shot is fired. So if it was an accidental discharge, it was not in the mix of them all tussling around on the ground. The officer in the gray had already turned around, and he actually had the gun pointed at the ground when you hear that first shot. And it was not right there in the main tussle. It was but again, it was like 1 second later. And I looked at the ground when I heard the shot. I didn't see a bullet. I didn't see anything. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. There were people standing right there. They would have been awfully close to their feet. I don't know. It didn't look to me like the gun discharged, but again, it happened so fast. I don't know. I just don't know. And yes, it happened when he walked away. The officer had already started walking away when that happens. But here's the thing, and Gerald, and this is why you're wrong, because you got to start things out in a negative way. You say, oh, the hypocrisy coming from these MAGA clowns right there, that means you have an invalid point if you've got to resort to that. All they do is lie and spread false information. Not one time have we lied or spread false information, because you can watch the video for yourself. And everyone has said, and we're going to continue to say, we wish it didn't happen. We wish it didn't happen. Of course, we wish it didn't happen. But at the same time, you don't bring a weapon to a protest in which you are the one obstructing police officers. Now, somebody like you, Gerald, you're the reason why people get killed. Because no, I'm not lying and I'm not spreading BS. I'm telling the truth. And I'll tell you, anybody can watch the video and see what the truth was. Now, we're going to go back and we're going to watch the other video. And you're going to see it. At this time, Alex was not shot. He still has the gun. Very similar to the tussle he had on the day he was killed. The only difference between this tussle and that tussle is that somebody yelled gun. That is the only difference. In this video here that we're getting ready to show you, had somebody said gun, meaning that the suspect has a gun and he's going to use it, then yes, lethal force would have been used. That's the only difference between this video and that video. And before you see this, is you're going to see that you're going to see that he is very violent. You can't act this way when you have a weapon. If you go to a concealed carry class, they're going to tell you this is the very last thing you want to do. Now, we could argue that point all the time, and it honestly, it doesn't matter. But when you see this, you're going to realize the only difference. As a matter of fact, it's so crazy that the tussle they were in looks exactly the same. His shirt's pulled up. You see his weapon in his holster. But the only difference is that nobody yelled gun. That's it. And the reason why he wasn't arrested before people ask is that they were in the middle of an operation. They were actually chasing someone when he decided to impede in their investigation, and which is why they stopped. They probably wouldn't have stopped had he not kicked out their taillight and spit on the vehicle. Then, of course, they're going to stop. And his actions were very clearly wrong. And ultimately, when you act like that with law enforcement, you probably are going to die. Whether you like to hear that or not, that's probably just the case. And I think most of us know that, and we've known that since we were children. So there's no excuse. Whoa, my light fell over. There's no excuse for his behavior. All right, I will fix that here in a minute. Things are a little questionable here with my lighting system. And so anyway, we're going to play that video. I'm going to fix my light. We'll come back and talk about it. What they do in these situations, though, is they take photos of people and they videotape people, and then later on they come back and arrest them.
This is a moment the news movement filmed on January 13th in Minneapolis, showing a man who appears to be Alex Pretti interacting with federal immigration agents 11 days before Border Patrol shot and killed him. Our footage was analyzed by the BBC, whose facial recognition technology confirmed his identity to a 97% degree of accuracy. On the morning of January 13th, our team received a tip that federal agents were blocking a street at the corner of East 36 and Park Avenue in Minneapolis. We arrived around 10:15 a.m. We saw observers shouting at the agents as they walked back to their vehicles. When they started driving away, the man kicked their taillight. An agent then got out of the vehicle, grabbed him, and pushed him to the ground. During the altercation, agents fired tear gas and pepper balls into the crowd. They continued to hold the man down before they retreat and he walks away. The man in our footage is wearing a similar outfit to what Pretti was wearing on the day he was killed. What appears to be a gun is also visible above his waistband. Here, he continues to stand at the scene. On the day he was killed, the Department of Homeland Security claims Pretti, a 37-year-old ICU nurse, approached officers holding a handgun. That claim has been contradicted by analysis of bystander videos from multiple news investigations, which concluded that Pretti was holding a phone, not a gun, when he was pinned to the street. Shortly after the altercation we filmed here on January 13th, federal agents drove away. Soon after that, we left the scene.
Okay, so this video is by a group called the News Movement. I know a lot of people have commented on other posts that I've made that TNM is an AI company, and I looked it up. There is an AI company called TNM. They've since been sold. They were a Korean AI company. They have nothing to do with this video. This video has been corroborated not only by the BBC, but CBS News, Fox News, CNN even talked about it. It is not AI. I know a lot of people would like it to be AI because they want to disprove the theory that he had prior incidents with law enforcement. And all of that, of course, is besides the point. However, it is not AI. It is called the News Movement. They are a group of citizen journalists who claim they support unbiased news. And I was actually looking through their page. I've never even heard of them before. And they actually had some good stuff on there. They report unbiased news. And therefore, when they gave this report, they didn't really seem to take sides on one direction or another. They just reported what they saw, and which is kind of nice in a way. And Sherry says another angle of this is on your messenger. I will take a look at that, Sherry. I wish I could show you guys that whole video because it shows the shots and where they went and all that other stuff, but I just don't have any way to do that. Paul, nor should I. Paul says, once you interject yourself into a situation or operation by the police while being armed, you're just asking to become part of the problem. Don't start. None won't be none. And of course, Paul, and it is. It's frustrating. And yes, Michael Bonds, he had to leave. And I appreciate, though, people like Michael, because you know what? He doesn't agree. It's okay to not agree. It really is. I don't expect everybody to agree with everything I say. And sometimes I'm even wrong about things. I don't expect, I know there's people out there with a completely different mindset than what we have as conservatives. There's different mindsets amongst us as conservatives. I don't have any problem with people who have a difference of opinion. It's how they approach it is a whole different story. As you guys probably saw, there was somebody that came in the comment line being very derogatory. When you see those people, just ignore them. On my end, it's as easy as clicking a little button and off they go. And I've never had people coming on the show doing that, so I've never had to use that button until this week. And when people start that up and they start talking about, oh, you're clowns, F this, F that, then you know what? They have nothing to add to the conversation. At least Michael Bonds didn't agree with what was going on, but he at least phrased it in a nice way, which is really all that matters. I'm more than happy to talk to people who have a difference of opinion. But when you start out acting like a total idiot, then guess what? Your opinion no longer matters to me, because as soon as you start talking like that, I realize you're one of these people who has zero common sense. Now, we saw that video, and just like Dan said, name calling is the last refuge of a bankrupt argument. You're right. And I am one of those people, of all people, and don't be offended by this, because to all of you, because I know a lot of people do use, various cuss words, swear words, whatever you want to call them, in their general language. I don't. You will never hear me say a cuss word or a swear word. I don't use them at all. I kind of feel like they're filler and they're words that don't need to be used, and I just don't use them. So you'll never hear me say any type of cuss word, because I just don't talk that way. I always feel like there's other things you can interject in there besides a cuss word. So we watched the video. We see that Alex Pretti does have a history. And we already knew that. We talked about it yesterday, but it's good to have that video. And I won't be surprised if more videos don't come out. There could certainly be more video out there, because he was right in the mix of things. So of course, the investigation continues. We don't know that he was really part of the database. I would say, yes, he was part of the federal agents database. We know they started a database because they wanted to make sure that they tracked these folks who were violent, who were chasing them, following them, in case something happened later on, or in case they can go back and prosecute these people at a later date when this operation is over. And don't think they can't. If you can remember January 6th, there were people still being arrested a year later, a whole year later, still arrested because they use facial recognition to go back and catch some of these people. And these federal agents are documenting everything. Not only do they have video cameras on their vehicles, but you see them using their own personal cell phones. And in fact, with the case with Renee Good, and the officer who did eventually shoot her, that's exactly what he was doing. He was walking around her car with a cell phone documenting what he saw, and he was getting her license plate. He was getting the vehicle description. He was, videotaping her face when she ran into him. And whether she meant to or not is really beside the point, isn't it? And the same thing with Alex Pretti. Was he intending to harm officers? We don't know. But what we do know, and this goes to prove that he did have violence in his past. We can see the anger now. He's not this nice little nurse that went to work and did all these great things for people, which he did. I'm sure he did. But there was another side to him where he was also angry. Now, I'm not going to get into, I was going to talk about this today. I don't think I'm going to, but his ex-wife has spoken out. And there's a lot of reports out there about some of the things that she has said. And some of them, it's just hearsay. So I'm not going to get into all that today. It's like a he said, she said. He has no way to defend himself against a lot of those allegations. But even his family she has said that he just had this pattern of going down this radicalized road. And, we've seen it time and time again. It just comes back to the theory of people like Walls, people like Frey. We played a bunch of videos yesterday. People inciting violence give these people the entitlement. And I don't understand it. I've got another video to show you. Speaking of entitlement, and this is where things get confusing to me. Now, this video is in Santa Barbara, and it's of these two women who are, guess what, impeding ICE officers trying to get in the middle of an investigation. One gets pepper sprayed. And she's just like, she just can't believe that they would do that to her. And then you see her little buddy, he's like, oh my God, don't these people realize that what they're doing is wrong? It's against the law. I don't get it. Is it entitlement? Is it stupidity? I don't know. Now here's these two idiot women fighting with agents in the middle of an investigation. He gets pepper sprayed for being an idiot. Idiot turns around like, oh my God, they pepper sprayed her. Why would they do something like that? She's just an innocent mom impeding in an investigation. I don't get it. Please help me understand. What is it with this lack of common sense? Is it entitlement? I think a lot of it's entitlement. I think in this case, like we see so often, these women in I think it was Santa Barbara, California, getting in the middle, obstructing a police investigation, a lawful order that they're carrying out. She wants to get in their face with her phone and videotape them carrying out their duties, their assignment for the day, lawful orders. And she thinks she has the right to stand in front of officers and stop them from doing what they're doing. And you'll hear these people say, well, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't arrest these people. Oh, yes, they can. And if you stand in their way, guess what? At the very least, you're going to get pepper sprayed. And then her friend turns around like, oh my God, I can't believe they just did that to her. Sally is so nice. She's got kids and in the PTA and a soccer mom. But yet, yes, soccer mom Sally was right in the middle of an investigation. I don't understand the nonsense of it. I'm trying to move the comments. I realize my comments aren't moving. Let's see, Mandy, and just imagine being law enforcement. Oh my God, trying to do your job and people are there yelling, screaming, blowing whistles, lots of confusion. Oh yeah, I saw a video one day that gave me a headache. And these officers were out trying to conduct their mission. And there's a lady following them everywhere they went, banging on a drum. So that was the most annoying part. Then they have people making, blowing whistles, probably 100 whistleblowers. They've got these other people banging cymbals. I mean, all to cause chaos and confusion. And I will never understand, and I know there's probably bureaucracy and red tape in the middle. I would like Donald Trump to say, hey, you're all insurrectionists. Let's round all these people up and take them out. Domestic terrorists, whatever you want to call them. And Sherry replying to Danny Chapman, he should be at work or home, not out disrupting law enforcement missions. You got that right. Sherry says, I hope they get that Barry guy. Name calling is one thing. Threatening lives is totally different. And Sherry, I've been threatened so many times, really over the past 20 years. Nothing new. But nothing new to be threatened. But some people, are just sitting behind their keyboard, being little keyboard warriors. Some of them aren't. And I'll tell you, I'm very well prepared for that. There was an instance I had several years ago where somebody did come to my door and they knocked on my door. I answered it. And this was back in the day, and this was somebody who was like somebody that somebody knew. And I answered the door and this guy was like, oh, make sure you turn this porch light off tonight because I'm going to sneak in your house like a cat in the night. I'm like, okay, shut the door, contact my friends who are police officers. Well, Like I said before, you may have heard me tell this story before. That guy's no longer alive. You don't play around and tell people you're coming to your home. And then Erica Kane posting AI videos is desperate. Well, Erica, I guess you missed the part where I said that Alex Pretti's mother, his family said the video is real. That is Alex. Deny it all you want, but it is the fact and it is the truth. And people can call it AI all they want because it doesn't fit their narrative. See, that's what's interesting about some Democrats and some liberals. If it doesn't fit their narrative, then, it just doesn't exist. They've got to call it out. Austin, it's our right to determine what a tyrannical government is. Duh, are you stupid? No, Austin, but I think that you are. And yes, you're right. If you want to call your government tyrannical, that's absolutely your right. Not only is it your right, but you can also go out and peacefully protest. And quite honestly, peacefully assemble is what's actually in the Constitution. At no point does it say protest. But yeah, if you think your government is tyrannical, I just lived through 4 years of tyrannical government under Joe Biden. And guess what? Never one time did I come armed to a protest and stand in front of law enforcement officers. Just didn't happen for me. Paul says, sad part about all of this is that the left want and need these sacrificial lambs so they can continue and justify their actions and protests. Sadly, the left continue to look over all of the people that have been murdered by the very people that they are protesting. I know it doesn't make it. That's why I said it's like mental illness, Paul. I had a whole show Monday about talking about mental illness and opening the institutions. Here we know that illegal criminals in this country have murdered so many people, so many people. And I've posted those videos. I've posted the photos. ICE and DHS has released information how violent some of these people are. And we are still in that phase of ICE deportations in which they're only looking for violent criminals. They're not looking for your average everyday citizen. They're not doing that. They're not looking if you're in this country illegally, and let's say you're just minding your own business, you've never committed a crime outside of entering illegally. They're not looking for you. They're asking you to self-deport. They're going to pay you $2,800 to self-deport, get all your affairs in order, versus grabbing you and picking you up. But at some point, we will move to that phase in the investigation. Now, me personally, I hope that when we get to that phase of the investigation where we've picked up the most violent offenders, that we take these other folks who are in our country illegally, who are actually adding, to our country. I do think there's people here illegally who are adding and beneficial to our country. I know I met a guy, don't know the guy, met a guy one night. This was probably 7 years ago. And this guy was explaining to me that he was a Marine, a United States Marine, had a fantastic service record. His mother came to the United States illegally. She lived in Chicago. They were very poor. She worked nonstop, cleaning houses, doing dishes, whatever she could do to raise, her family. And all of her children ended up joining. They were, of course, birthright citizens because they were born here, even though she was illegally. They all joined the military. They all love this country. His mom loves this country. She can't afford to become an American citizen. And they were all, really struggling. Now, there's a lot of people just like that woman here. And I hope that before we get to those folks, they're the last people on the list for deportation. I hope when we get to those people, we can come up with a better plan to say, hey, let's fast track. If they want to become American citizens, they love this country as much as we do. Let's fast track their citizenship. Let's reduce those fees or get the fees out of the way. And, they show us they're a productive citizen in this country, then, hey, we'll be happy to have them. That's how I feel. A lot of you will not agree with that, but that is how I feel. But we're not at that phase yet. Right now, we're still looking for violent criminals, and we're finding an awful lot of them. Sherry says, Erica Kane, wait till you see the other video. Oh, well, Sherry, I'll have to take a look at that. Tammy says, do they follow them? How do they know where ICE is at? Yeah, Tammy, what they do is they have there's several different groups, and they use Signal is one of the apps they use. There's several apps out there. And on these apps, they have spotters. It's crazy how organized these people are, quite honestly. And some of them are paid, some of them are not. Some of them are just out there on their own volition. But what they do is they have spotters all over the city. There's hundreds of these people, thousands of these people, let's say, just as an example, in Minneapolis. So they'll be at different entry points into the city. And as soon as they see what they believe is an ICE vehicles are kind of recognizable just because they're usually SUVs or minivans, and they've got dark windows, and they're usually out of state license plates. They can sometimes see the officers through the front window. But as soon as they see what they think is ICE, now they've made mistakes and followed people that weren't ICE, but as soon as they see them, they get on their little app and they say, oh, so-and-so, we see ICE at XX corner. Well, then they've got other people placed around the city, and they track their movements. And they've also got groups of people driving around in caravans. And as soon as they report that ICE was seen at a certain area, that caravan hurries up and finds that location, and they drive like maniacs trying to catch up with ICE. And we kind of saw that actually with Renee Good, because that's kind of when the process of where she was just catching up to the ICE officers that were reported on this particular street. And so when they catch up to these officers, and then they do everything they can to stop them. They will use their vehicles to cause a blockade where ICE vehicles can't get through. They'll form human chains. They do all kinds of absolute nonsense that leads to getting people killed, is what they do. And, Karen, I just don't get why people, I don't either. But, something that I always do keep in mind is that right now, for us conservatives, things are looking pretty good, but there may be a time somewhere down the road. Right now, I feel like we have police on our side, military's on our side, but there may be a time when that's not going to happen. And Democrats tried awfully hard in the Biden administration to turn police officers, to hire as many far left folks as they could in the military and in the police departments. They were encouraging police chiefs to fire any conservatives within their force. And of course, most police chiefs were not going to do that, because most of the chiefs themselves were conservatives. I reported on it at the time when all this was going on. There could be a time where we're as angry as these people are. I'll tell you, if anybody comes into our country and they say, hey, ladies, you guys all have to start wearing black burqas and black out your windows, and you can't leave your home without a man, trust me, I'm going to be out there fighting some folks too. So I get that side of it also. And Javier, did the drum lady get mag dumped too? No, Javier, she did not. Because the drum lady, guess what? She was playing a drum. She didn't have a weapon. She wasn't tussling with officers. But you know what? If you want to go give it a shot, I all these people who ask these questions, if there's an experiment, make sure somebody videotapes it. Go on out into a city like Minneapolis or anywhere, it doesn't matter where, and you carry your weapon and you start fighting and impeding officers, resisting and being non-compliant, and then we'll find out if you survive. And let's see. Oh, here we go again. Matt, posting AI videos and claiming them to be truth is very embarrassing on your end. Oh, little crybaby. You are literally a wannabe journalist. Stop trying to create a narrative that fits your fascist agenda. Well, Matt, you're such a big crybaby. What a little snowflake you might be. But let me tell you what, Matt, like I said before, the video's real. I know you don't want it to be real, because it shows one of your brothers in arms, not only getting smoked in one of the videos, but it also shows your other little brother in arms, showing that he's a violent offender, maybe a violent offender. I'm not saying he deserved to be killed. No one deserves to be killed. However, you could also twist that around and say, well, if you're playing with guns and you're out fighting law enforcement, maybe you're going to get what you're asking for. But Matt, unfortunately, that video is real. And the family has agreed that it's real. So we're just going to leave that alone. I think it's funny how they want to turn around and act like, oh, and Sherry, oh, the trolls are back. You got that right, Sherry. They're going to keep coming back. But you know what? I've got a nice little delete button. I'll just delete as they come along. I actually find some of it humorous, especially when they say it's an AI video. I'm like, okay, the family has publicly said the video is not AI. And thank you, Gary. But you know what? They're never going to believe that. They want to stick to their narrative. Dan says, quoting the Bible, let's see. If I speak in the voice of men or angels, but have not love, I am only banging a gong or a cymbal. Yep, that is right. And let's see here. Paul, if they have no criminal record and are productive members of society, then they should be granted amnesty. I agree. Jeannie, which is so funny. Obama was against granting anyone amnesty. anyone. I put that video on my Facebook page. In Obama's world, if anybody was here illegally, they do not get amnesty no matter what. But I don't see anybody fighting Obama over it. I surely don't remember any protests. And Sherry, Trump should tell all illegals to vote Republican, and he'll give them temporary status, which is how quick Dems want them out. And a lot of people who are in our country illegal are actually Trump supporters. They are actually Trump supporters. I'm gonna guess those are the non-criminals. Jay says minivan militia is the term I heard, and I think it's fitting. I agree. Oh, Martin, you've hurt my feelings so bad. Oh my goodness. People in their comments it's kind of funny because it's literally impossible to hurt my feelings. But people come on, they're like, "Oh, you're so bad. You just don't want to be journalists." Blah 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 blah. And I think it's kind of funny. And Mary says, "Guess you all heard that vile nurse Lexi Lawler." Yes, and I'll tell you, she's not the only one. Now, Lexi Lawler, not only did she lose her job, but she is not even allowed to have a medical license to be a nurse anywhere in the entire state of Florida. So if she wants to go back to work, she's going to have to move to another state. Javier, I actually agree that those that came in illegally should be deported. The way that it's being conducted is the issue. The itchy triggers are the issue. They need to be better trained. I agree that people should stay out of the way, but they didn't try to de-escalate at all. The problem is, Javier, is that in some situations, it happens so fast that you can't always de-escalate. Like I've said a 1,000 times over, and I appreciate your opinion and your viewpoint on things. And you're certainly not the only one. I know a lot of conservatives who feel the same way. I've talked to a lot of them. But the problem is that, again, it happens so fast. They don't have the luxury of going back and watching it in slow motion. Here these officers are, the rhetoric is already very heated. They already know that a lot of these protesters and agitators have weapons. They know they want to use these weapons, and they're just looking for an excuse to use these weapons against these federal agents. And they end up in this, tussle on the ground, and it's moving very quickly. It was very easy for somebody to reach back and to grab their weapon. And there were absolutely, in my opinion, there were mistakes that were made. The guy in the gray who grabs the weapon should have made it very clear that, hey, I have the weapon, and I didn't see him do that. I didn't hear him do that. All I saw was he grabbed the weapon and he ran away. And I think that was the wrong move. And now, of course, I could be speaking ahead of myself because I haven't seen the results of the investigation. There could be, he may have announced it and we just didn't hear it on the video. I don't know. But it sure didn't look like the other officers knew he took the weapon. So then, and I don't know who yelled gun. And there were, if you look at it, kind of reminds me, I don't know if you guys on Facebook ever seen those videos, and then they have this little turtle who goes around, and they show this little turtle being these different people who are drunk driving in different things. I can't remember what those are called, but I watch a lot of those videos, and they call it the turtle tussle. And this little turtle's in there, and he's tussling around with these officers, and it happens so fast, and everybody's moving, and all you see is hands. But the fact that they don't know whose hands are whose hands, and the only thing I can think is these officers heard the word gun, they saw a hand on a gun. They probably couldn't put it all together when you literally have 5 or 6 officers in this turtle tussle, and the next thing you know, they're fearful for their life, and they fire their weapon. Now, whether there was an accidental discharge, I think is a good possibility. And I'm not going to have a show tomorrow. I don't know why I didn't post that, but I do have the photo isolated where you see the gun, and at the moment of where you hear the shot. I'll post that on my personal Facebook page later. I didn't see a bullet, but I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know. And it's a tough situation. I can guarantee you these officers wish it didn't happen. I don't think anybody wants to go out to work that day and wants to take a life. And I don't think it's about retraining. I don't think, I've thought about this 1,000 times over. A lot of people say, well, officers should be trained to shoot someone in the leg. Well, let's just say Alex Pretti, let's just say they shot him in the leg and he actually did have another gun. And then he pulls out his gun and he shoots an officer. I don't think an officer has to wait until they get shot before they need to use lethal force. And the best mode, I think, and the best mode of preventing, these things from happening is to simply be compliant. How many times have we told people, over the years? I remember telling my son, who's a white guy, you don't have to be black, you don't have to be Hispanic, or you don't have to be a protester, to tell people this. I remember telling my son from a very young age that, hey, if you ever have an encounter with police officers, you be compliant. You make sure your hands are visible. You make sure that you stop and you listen to what they're saying. You don't try to argue, listen to what they're saying so you can hear clear directions, and you do whatever they tell you to do, even if they're wrong, even if you don't agree with what they're doing, you still comply. Because if you comply, guess what? We'll sort it all out later. We'll make sure that we go and we tell our story and we get it all straightened out. But you'll never have that chance if you don't comply. We've been telling that people for so long, that I don't understand why it's not sticking. Well, Joe Schmitt, I think you're the joke, because as I said, Alex Pretti's family has confirmed the video. Now, if you want to go after Alex Pretti's family for confirming the video, please go ahead and do so. I'm sure they would love to hear from you. But Alex Pretti's family has confirmed that video is not AI, that is their son, and that is the actual incident that did take place. And Joe Schmitt, again, 2A, another person who doesn't understand the law. 2A doesn't work that way. If you carry a concealed, in the city of Minneapolis, it is a concealed carry permit you must have. And in order to, no, actually, Joe, you can look on, let's see, CNN, you can look on Fox News, you can look on the BBC, you can look at all these different news stations, and you can actually see that they have confirmed. So, Joe, since you don't have anything positive to add, we will be seeing you another day. And let's see, Javier says it shouldn't have gotten to that point. The agent pushing two females should have disengaged. Javier, there's a lot going on at these protests, and their goal was to get these people out of the street. The problem is that it's easy enough to say officers should just push these people and went on their way. But the problem is these people that they're pushing off out of the street onto the sidewalk were attempting to create a roadblock with their vehicles. They were all coordinating a roadblock to block ICE officers. And so they're trying to get them out of the street, and they sprayed pepper spray on them. I honestly, you can disagree with me all you want. I don't have a problem with that happening, because if they didn't do what they did, these people are just going to keep coming back into the street. It's like, how many times are you going to do this? You're going to keep getting back in the street, try to block us. At some point, they have to take action. And I still don't fully understand why, Alex Pretti was holding on to that one woman like he was. I will never figure that out. But I do think at the very beginning, that officer wasn't even caring about Alex Pretti, but Alex Pretti was holding on to this woman. This woman's trying to get free, excuse me, from his grip, and she can't. I don't know what was going on there. I don't think he was trying to harm her. I really have no idea. Maybe he was trying to save her when she didn't feel like she needed to be saved. And the officers are trying to get him away from her because it looks like, like he's assaulting her. And allegedly she yells out, "Hey, what are you doing?" Anyway, we could talk about it till the end, and it doesn't really matter. We will find out what the investigation says soon enough. Let's see. I don't know. This computer is so hard to scroll to comments. Let's see. Sorry for the silence. I'm just trying to read some of your comments. Okay, well, I'm not going to be able to scroll back. I don't know what's going on my computer. Good morning, Kelly Apt. Yeah, if somebody comes on the show, don't worry about them. If they have something valuable to add, that's fine. We'll engage with it. But if they're just coming on to be stupid, then off they go. Lots of other things to talk about. I don't have a whole lot more time because I've got to get to work today. But some of the things I also want to go over, outside of the crazy protests that are happening in Minneapolis, our very own, if you're a Missourian, our very own Eric Schmitt said, guess what? Protests are going to continue. ICE is going to continue. We are not giving up. Now, I'm going to tell you, I've said this for a long time. I really do think that Eric Schmitt will be our president someday. Now, I think he's got to wait for J.D. Vance first, but I definitely do see Eric Schmitt in that role. So I'm going to play a little clip here of our very own Missouri's Eric Schmitt.
The deportations must continue. Sanctuary cities must end. The era of fake deals is over. There will be no fake, quote unquote, comprehensive immigration reform, because a nation does not need new laws to enforce the ones it already has. President Trump demonstrated a basic truth of self-government. Law without enforcement is not law at all. Congress criminalized illegal entry. The executive branch is obligated to enforce it. And that is exactly what will happen. The systematic removal of those who violated federal law by entering this country illegally. No theatrics, no apologies, no amnesty, just enforcement. So, protest all you want, but let law enforcement do their jobs, enforcing the immigration laws that Republicans and Democrats passed. And let our men and women in law enforcement get home safe to their families. The only way out is.
All right, our very own Eric Schmitt. Happy to see him talk. And, I've been very happy with Eric Schmitt. I remember back when it was Eric Schmitt versus Eric Greitens, I was definitely on Greitens' team because I really, and I still feel Eric Schmitt is very much the politician. Not to say that Greitens isn't, but Eric Schmitt, I was kind of worried about him going into Congress because I kind of worried he'd play the game. I know, as a matter of fact, I know Eric Schmitt's best friend from when he was younger, his former roommate, and he's a good guy. I have no question about him being a good guy. And, but I will tell you that back in the day when I was on various radio shows, I interviewed him through 2 different radio shows, and he was always very straightforward. There were never any questions that we were told we couldn't ask. And there were several different things that I remember bringing up to him. And I actually saw that legislation come into place. One of those examples I've said before was the untested rape kits. I've wrote a crime blog for many years. I don't have time to do that right now, but I still keep up with cases. And it is a fact that every serial rapist usually does become a serial killer. If you're a serial rapist, you end up becoming a serial killer because your crimes continue to escalate. It starts out small, stalking, window peeping, and then it starts out with becoming a serial rapist, and then you turn into a serial killer. And I told him how important it is that we test rape kits. And at that time, Missouri, just like many other cities across the United States, had thousands of untested rape kits. And here we have people running around on the street committing some very serious crimes. And there are actually right now a couple of serial killers in the St. Louis area. And there were at that time too. And I remember telling him that, man, we've got to get these rape kits tested, because if we do, then we can get some of these people off the streets before they make that first homicide, before they become a serial killer. And he didn't say a whole lot about it on the show. He said, I didn't even know that we had untested rape kits. He didn't even know that Missouri had, tens of thousands of untested rape kits. But I'll tell you what, just a few weeks later, it was announced that Eric Schmitt was heading this area where he has instructed Missouri to get all those rape kits tested. He is a man of conviction. He stands behind what he believes. And I do think he's listening to the people. I really do. I think that if you have a way to get word to Eric Schmitt or to his people, that he will take it seriously. And I can't say I could say that about most other lawmakers. Most people, you kind of bring something up to them and they're kind of like, yeah, okay, sounds important to me. But no, Eric Schmitt takes these things to heart. And he's like, you know what? That's a good idea. Let's do it. And I like that about him. And I'm very glad we had him in Missouri. Unfortunately, lost him to Congress, but he's in a better place now working for Donald Trump. Javier says, is Missouri having a lot of immigration issues? I'm considering Fort Leonard Wood for my next duty station, but I'm not too excited to be asked for my passport every time I leave the house. Javier, no, not a lot of that going on in Missouri. I'm not going to get into everything that I do, but I have had the opportunity of being at events with the soldiers at Fort Leonard Wood a few times lately. Missouri is not a sanctuary city. If people come here and they commit crimes, there's definitely a problem. But no, ICE activity has not been big in Missouri. And that's because Missouri is a very much of a red state. And in Missouri, they kind of take care of things as they go. I'm not saying there aren't people here who are illegal, and I'm not saying ICE isn't carrying out some operations in the state of Missouri, but nothing like what you're seeing in Minneapolis and some of these other places. Certainly not. Now, you might have Colonel Joe Adams on you. No, I'm just kidding. And now let's see here. So some of the other things I want to talk about, speaking of Governor Walz, you saw that situation with Ilhan, I never can say her name right, Omar. And there was a guy, and I was going to talk about this yesterday, I never got around to it, but there was a guy who came up to her in some kind of conference she was giving. Why she's giving a conference, I'll never know. But he came up to her and he squirted her with something. I think since then they found out it was like apple cider vinegar. Some people were joking around that it was holy water, but he squirted out of a syringe this stuff. They tackled him, got him out of there. Since then, there's been a couple photos released that show her posing with him. That doesn't mean she knows him. He could have been just somebody who acted like a fan, and took some photos with her. I don't know. But Donald Trump, of course, has kind of joked around that she probably set it up, herself. A lot of people are laughing about her. And what was that guy, Jussie Smollett, that she Jussie Smolletted, the situation. And then, of course, we have Walz, who blames the whole thing on Trump. I mean, Tim Walz is somebody who has done nothing but incite violence. The guy has done nothing but incite violence. And then he has the nerve to try to say that Donald Trump caused this to happen to Walz. Now, I'm going to try to play it. Let me take a look here. I don't know if I'm playing the right video.
Is blind sight, which will enable those who have total...
We'll talk about that later. That's Elon Musk talking about how he's developed a new product to keep people from being blind. I know I added this video today of Walz, but I've got so many videos on here. Let's see if it's this one.
Do you blame President Trump for this attack on Representative Omar?
Well, certainly. It's the tone that's in this country. This has all been said. I think it goes back, years of this type of political rhetoric. I can't specifically, and I know the subject. I talked to the representative last night. She was good, but this is the thing that there's no tone. And I said that the president constantly attacks Representative Omar, attacks her citizenship, attacks the very decency of it, and we've asked him time and time again to stop it. I don't believe he's capable of stopping it. I keep coming back to this. The decency of the American people is going to have to speak up, because even in any small thing he puts on social media, he finds a way to attack her. I'm glad she's safe and appreciate it.
Do you have an idea what the substance was?
I do.
Apple cider vinegar. That's what I'm told the substance was. Okay, so I have a video. I'm not going to play it here because it's too long. I kind of touched base on it the other day with Ilhan Omar, where she and her husband, are owners of a winery. There's a whole investigation that has taken place, and it's pretty darn funny, where she owns this winery, just another facade for bringing in money. I think the winery has like a couple $1,000s, listed as assets that first year. Well, then by the following year, they have, what is it, $5 million? Was it $5 million? I think it's $5 million, that was given to this winery for whatever type of transactions they're doing. Well, this investigator goes out to this winery, and of course, there's no winery there. There's nothing there. This guy goes online. He's like, okay, I'm going to buy some wine from this winery that Omar owns, but the place doesn't exist. There's a website, but there's no wine that it sells. You can't buy wine because it's not real. It's just another fake company. Now, the Department of Doge was working on these types of things, and somebody asked me earlier this morning, well, why didn't the Department of Doge uncover, all of these different state instances of fraud? It's because they didn't get far enough. We talked about this the other day. They didn't get far enough. I really do think that as soon as the Department of Doge started really getting into the fraud, and as soon as they uncovered the fact that all of these different people, Republicans too, not just Democrats, as soon as they uncovered the fact that all of these different people had created these NGOs right before Biden was leading office. When Biden was leading office, the auto pen was just handing out money left and right. But they knew that there was going to be audits done. They knew the money train was going to stop. So they created all these NGOs and started, having all of this government money going into these NGOs. And Omar, of course, is no different in this situation. And and eventually she's going to be found. But I think as soon as some Republicans, I'm sorry to say this, but I believe it's true, as soon as there were some Republicans who saw what the Department of Doge was doing, I think they came up with a way to tell Donald Trump, hey, enough, we got to stop where we're at, before everything falls apart. Now, I'm not saying that Donald Trump knew, that all this fraud was taking place and therefore he, reduced the operations of the Department of Doge. But I do think that a lot of Republicans in Congress did shut it down. But we're finding out anyway. And eventually there will be some investigations. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump has said that he's just created a new fraud department. As a matter of fact, I don't know this person's name. Maybe you guys do. Colin McDonald. Do you know Colin McDonald? I have no idea who that is, and maybe I should. But he is going to be the assistant AG. I don't know him, but I didn't even know we had an assistant AG. So the assistant AG, Colin McDonald, he's going to head this new fraud division at the Justice Department. And his only job is going to be looking at these situations like Omar and all these NGOs. So it's almost like what Elon Musk was doing, but it's going to be this Colin guy. I know nothing about him. Paul says, as a first responder for over 30 years, and a hazmat technician, I can tell you that there was no protocols that were followed after Omar was sprayed with an unknown substance. She should have been isolated and taken to an area where she should be decontaminated, and everyone in that room should have received the same treatment until the substance was identified. Paul, that never even occurred to me, and you are absolutely correct, because what if it had been a bioweapon? They're just going to allow this guy to spray this bioweapon, especially in a syringe. And everybody's just, oh, it's okay. It's okay. And she just goes on about her business and continues shaking some people's hands. You're right. You're absolutely correct. And knowing her, I'm not saying it was a setup, but it wouldn't surprise me. Javier says, I had a lot of people tell me that St. Louis is horrible, but I've had nothing but good experiences a few times I've been. Well, Javier, let me tell you something. If you go to St. Louis City, I work in St. Louis City sometimes. I don't have a problem with St. Louis City because I'm not an idiot. I try to be very careful. There's a reason why St. Louis City is the murder capital of the United States. And that is because it can be a very dangerous situation. I just read a story, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, where there was a young man who came to St. Louis on a train. And I think it was a train it was a bus. It was a bus. He came to St. Louis on a bus. And he was coming from St. Louis going, I don't know where, but St. Louis was just a stop through. Well, he got off the bus and disappeared. Nobody saw him again. Then they found his body just the other day, and his family has been searching for him. Now, there's a lot of speculation as to what happened to him. Maybe he got off the bus looking for drugs. Yeah, it was revealed, I think, that he was a transgender. Maybe, some people said maybe he was looking to meet with somebody here in town. Sometimes people come to town, they're passing through on trains or buses, and they're on Tinder or these different sites. I know that sounds crazy, but it actually happens more often than you can imagine. And they get off and just to meet up somebody really quick and before they head out. That happens more often than you can think of. But if you don't do things like that, Javier, if you're very careful what you do, and you're in your vehicle, and as soon as you stop and park somewhere, you get out and you go into where you're trying to go. You're not on your phone and distracted where somebody can rob you. So yeah, it's pretty bad, but you have to know where you can and can't go. But the thing is, if you go outside of the city of St. Louis, in the counties, there's crime everywhere, but it's not nearly as bad. You're not going to feel like your life is threatened as much as it might be in St. Louis City. Now, there's situations around St. Louis is a great sports city. We have the St. Louis Blues, we have the Cardinals, we have soccer, we have all these things. And I'll tell you, I'm from Chicago, but I have never seen a situation in St. Louis where people are so incredibly fun and friendly than when you go downtown to some of these sporting events. It is absolutely fantastic and something everybody should experience. But if you're going to head out to Fort Leonard Wood, it's a very rural area. There's not a lot out there. It's in a very, very rural area, but it's a nice place. And let's see, Carl says, you're correct. But how many civilians know this? Yeah. And you were replying to Paul about, of course, what he was talking about. Speaking of Governor Walz, did you know Amy Klobuchar has announced that she wants to be the next governor behind Walz? Now, I have a feeling she would be worse than Walz. We've got to have a good Republican stand up, and I think it would be very difficult for a Republican to win in Minneapolis or the state of Minnesota, period. I think it'd be very difficult, especially with all of this going on. It would be really nice for that to happen. Now, the state of Illinois, Pritzker, this surprised me It may surprise some of you, but Pritzker has actually said that he is looking to abolish property taxes, if I get the word right, property taxes in the state of Illinois. I mean, wouldn't that be fantastic? And I'm really surprised. I think that this last election was so close for Pritzker that he thought, man, if I don't do something, I'm probably going to lose. So he's wanting to abolish property taxes across the state of Illinois. I really hope that he does. I hope that that takes place. Of course, Florida looking to do the same. There's a couple other states looking at it, but I do hope it happens. And I think if we can eliminate property taxes in some states, I think that we can eliminate them in more. And I'll tell you, all these protests and all these things going on, if there's anything that's going to get me out to protest, it's probably going to be taxes. I feel like we already fought this revolution once. Now here we are paying taxes and then finding out our taxes are really supporting giving paychecks to all these folks who are out fighting our law enforcement. We can't have that happen. Jay says that's why it's called Fort Lost in the Woods. It's a very nice area, certainly very safe, but not a lot going on out at the Fort Leonard Wood. Very, very quiet, about out in the middle of a bunch of fields and forest. And I don't remember, I'll be driving. Well, I'm not going to go over my details where I'm at because too many people are following me and threatening me. But I will be there, here in the next several days, but in that general area. But yeah, it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It's a nice place, good people there, no question about that. They have some fantastic commanders there, sergeants and so on. I've met a number of them. So certainly a good place to be. And some of the other things I wanted to get into before we go. Let me think here. I should start taking some notes because I just got to kind of remember things off the top of my head. Later on, we're going to catch up to Homan and what Homan has to say. I know he had a press conference today. I've heard that Governor Walz might do his own press conference, probably to counter. I have a feeling Donald Trump's going to be speaking out because Frey is being so obstinate. Donald Trump said, hey, no more sanctuary city. We're getting rid of sanctuary cities. Frey says, no, we'll always be a sanctuary city. So those two are probably going to battle it out at some point. Donald Trump's got a lot of battles ahead of him. I want to talk about Fulton County, Georgia. As you probably know, it was raided yesterday. The FBI raided Fulton County, Georgia their election headquarters there. And, and I get it. One thing, I do have a video of something I'm going to show you guys. I think I loaded this up today. And, with me, it's always just a matter of figuring out which video is which. I think this is the one because, of course, they want to bring back mail-in voting. We can't let that happen. They're going to come up with some reason, of course, why we have to encourage mail-in voting. We can't let that happen. But I know you guys remember back in 2020, all the people who were ballot harvesting. I'm going to show you a video of this guy. This is exactly why they raided the Fulton County, Georgia election office, is exactly because of this type of situation with this person. Now, if you recall, and I do recall back in 2020 in that election, that Georgia was one of those states where they separated the envelope from the ballot. Well, the signature was on the inside of the envelope. So they had a ballot with no signature. They separated the two. No way to put them back together. And I would guarantee you they did that with intent. Now, Fulton County is where you will find Atlanta. Atlanta is the primary, I would say, blue city throughout Georgia. As many of you know, I spent 42 days in Georgia, getting out the early vote for Donald Trump. And I will tell you, most of Georgia is absolutely Trump country. No question about it. There are some folks in Ringgold. I came across some folks in the Atlanta area who were obviously very much against Donald Trump, very, very liberal, very much blue cities. But by far and large, Georgia, absolutely, absolutely our red state. But here's the thing, is part of my polling when I was going around talking to these individuals, I had a list. I haven't really been able to talk about this because I didn't want to violate any of the disclosure acts, that we had at the time. I think at this point down the road, I'm okay to talk about it. But one of the things we were doing is we were talking to people, and I had a list of people who it either did or did not vote for Donald Trump in the last election. So my job was to go to the homes of people who are listed as Republican voters, but who did not vote for Donald Trump in 2020. So my goal was to go to these people's houses, knock on the door and say, hey, sir, madam, whatever their name might be. I had their name, all their voting information at hand. And I would say, okay, Mrs. Fuller, I see here you're a registered Republican. However, in the 2020 election, you did not vote at all. You didn't vote for Donald Trump, or you didn't vote at all. Or maybe my list said she voted Democrat, but she's a Republican voter. Now, 99.9% of the time when I talked to these people, they said, yes, I did. I did vote for Donald Trump in 2020. I did vote for Donald Trump in 2020. Do you not show I voted for Donald Trump? You know, and I didn't get into those specifics with them because I didn't want them to know what we were doing. But I will tell you, when I was going through the state of Georgia, and I'm sure this happened in many states, but in the state of Georgia particularly is the one I can talk about. And there were people who absolutely told me, yes, I did vote for Donald Trump. Are you kidding? Now, there was a couple people who said, I don't like Donald Trump. Yes, I'm a Republican. I would never vote for him. So either I didn't vote at all or I voted for a Democrat. That happened very rarely. So I know for a fact, I don't care what you say about it, I know for a fact, because I saw it with my own eyes, that there were many people in the state of Georgia who did vote for Donald Trump in 2020. And for whatever reason, their votes were either not counted at all or they were counted as a Democrat vote. And I'll tell you, I had people answer the door. They were in tears, you know, oh, I love Donald Trump and I can't wait to see what he's going to do for us. And, you know, we talked about all that at the time. But I'm going to show you this video here. And this is exactly why we can't allow this ballot harvesting to continue.
Ballots? Yeah. I thought they collected them all. I just want to document.
No, we're still collecting.
How much? Wait, but how come they already called the state?
Because these are mail-in ballots.
Are there a ton in there?
Yeah.
All right, are you collecting from a lot of places? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'll just document. Thank you guys. Are you guys official election guys? All right, and let me just ask you one thing. Where do you guys take them?
Election center. That's it.
Is that in the government building?
LA County.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there a lot more in there?
6 feet, please.
Okay. Thank you guys. I just want to see because they called our state so
6 feet,
quickly.
please.
I know, I am.
You don't have a mask either.
Oh yeah, sorry.
And this is exactly why we were seeing, remember, ballots dumped in the woods? People picking up ballots being dumped in the woods. Remember how many postal service workers picked up ballots and we found them dumped in the woods? We can't have this going on. We have to have better regulation. These were mail-in ballots, and that just goes to show how mail-in ballots, they can be tampered with. Here are these guys. Now, hopefully these people like this take the ballots, they take them in and they get counted. But we know that absolutely didn't happen. I know it didn't happen because I talked to so many people, hundreds of people, who said, oh, I did vote for Donald Trump, but yet their vote didn't count. You know, and a lot of them were mail-in ballots. And thankfully for Elon Musk, we're going to talk about Elon Musk before we head out for the day. Thankfully for Elon Musk, of course, was behind America PAC. That's who I worked for. I was working for America PAC, and Elon Musk was very involved. And I will always say that Elon Musk and Charlie Kirk were integral in Donald Trump winning. And of course, we know that's why Charlie Kirk is no longer with us, you know, any longer. He was with Turning Point, of course, USA. I had the opportunity to interview Charlie Kirk one time, and, you know, in person, he came into the studio. He was definitely the real deal, no question about it. And Charlie Kirk was running Turning Point. Turning Point was doing the same thing that America PAC was, but on a lesser scale. Turning Point didn't have the money that, of course, Elon Musk had to go into his super PAC. So, because at one point Turning Point contacted me and I'm like, well, I'm already in Georgia. They wanted me to go to Wisconsin. And I'm like, I'm not leaving Georgia to go to Wisconsin. It's cold in Wisconsin. It's beautiful in Georgia. And they were going to pay, they paid a little bit differently. You know, I think they offered to pay me, I think it was it $2,500 a week, I think, but they don't cover, you know, but they do pay for hotel. And then, Elon Musk with America PAC, they were paying people about $48 to $50 an hour, not covering hotel or gas or anything along those lines, and then plus bonuses and different things. So yeah, you know, you do get paid when you go out and canvass and go, of course, because you're working, you're taking your time out of your life to go and do these things. But Elon Musk and Charlie Kirk, they got that election for us. There's no question about it. Had it not been for these two people, there is no way Donald Trump would be sitting in that office right now. Elon Musk knew. He knew how the cheating that took place in 2020. I don't care if you say, you can argue all you want that the cheating never took place. I know most of you aren't going to say that, but I can guarantee you. And you guys, I know some people are still referring to Matt. I blocked him. So if you guys can see him, I can't. I don't know why. But yeah, I'm sure that talking about this will certainly trigger people. Anybody who makes negative comments, I block. I can't see them. If you guys can, I don't know how. Or maybe, but I've never had to block people before this week, so I don't know. But either way, Elon Musk knew. He knew that in order for Democrats not to cheat again, that Donald Trump had to win the early vote. So we went out, and our goal not only was confirming, we had a 3-part goal. One part goal was mapping, because we would go to different addresses and no one lived there, or maybe somebody passed away, maybe they were retired, maybe they moved. So we were kind of notating that type of information. Everything goes in a database. The second part was finding out why somebody didn't vote for Donald Trump in the past, even though they're registered Republican. The third part was telling people, hey, you need to go out and vote like right now. Polling, the polls open in your city. I can't remember now what day it was. Was it? I don't remember. It was the 9th or 7th or something of one of those months. And I remember telling these people, no, you don't wait. People would say, oh, we always go on election day. Don't wait till election day. I'm like, if you wait till election day, your vote's not going to count. You need to go now. The day the polls open, make a plan to go on that day. Vote early, because we knew that those votes that came in early would be tallied before the cheating happens. In 2020, the cheating happened on election day. Remember how, what was that? Was that Georgia? I can't remember what state that was or what city that was, where they stopped counting votes in the middle of the night because they said they had like a water leak or something. And then the next day, all of a sudden, all the votes jumped up, for Biden. So we know that the cheating happened on election day. So our goal was to get out the vote early for Donald Trump. And you know what? Elon Musk was right. We got out the vote early, not just for Georgia, but for several other states. Georgia turned red, of course, and certainly Trump won Georgia, which was a very important state, by the way. And Pennsylvania, there was Arizona, there was a couple other important states as well. So Elon Musk was very instrumental in that. Elon Musk is not done. He's not gone. He's still running America PAC. And I'm so glad that they still have the FBI out looking into this election fraud. Now, will we ever see any accountability? No. They can't go back and they can't give those years back to Donald Trump. Unfortunately, he's not going to get a third term like a lot of people keep saying. That's not going to happen. Hopefully, J.D. Vance will win, and hopefully under Donald Trump's term, we have at least learned something, and that we will no longer have election fraud taking place. And Javier says, Matt Lee, I think you can't really blame them when you take it at face value. Resorting to name calling and arguing is why a lot of us on the left are getting called triggered retards. Yeah, well, I don't know why I can't see. I did block him, but I thought that blocked him for everyone. I didn't realize it only blocked him for me. Well, I'll take care of that after the show. Matt Lee will not be joining us after today. Paul says Charlie Kirk and the Amish in Pennsylvania were responsible for Trump getting reelected. Absolutely, Paul. Like you said, Charlie Kirk was running his own operation. He didn't have quite the backing that Elon Musk did, but he was doing the exact same thing. Those two had a plan together to get out that early vote. Amish being very instrumental in that, because they don't want to be forced to vaccinate. They don't want to be, forced to change their lives and live differently under Democrat rule. So they did everything they could. There was nothing I liked. I went through, when I was in Georgia, through this Amish area, and there were Trump flags everywhere. Of course, in Georgia, I think I may have only seen a dozen, Harris signs. There weren't many at all. And I always made sure I stopped and left those people some Trump leaflets. But I'll tell you, things were a little hairy in Georgia. There was a couple times where we were chased away from people's houses. A couple of times somebody threatened to get their gun if we didn't leave right away. We were up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it's true, what they say sometimes about the mountains is they got all these little hollers, and you really don't know what you're going to find. You're driving down this dirt road in the middle of the woods up on top of a mountain, and then you go down this little holler, and you really have no idea what's going to be on the other side. And most of the time, the people were very angry when we first pulled up, what are you doing here? Now, if we saw signs that said private property or no trespassing, we would take a photo of that sign just to mark it, and then we wouldn't go back. But a lot of these, little holler areas don't have signs. So you go back, and I remember one lady came out and told, I was canvassing with my son, and she came out and told us, she goes, you need to be really careful. She's like, we support Trump. Most of the people do in this area do. This is definitely Trump country. However, there's a lot of people doing a lot of different things back here, and they don't care who you are if you see what they're doing. And she's like, you guys really need to be careful. You definitely shouldn't be just driving up on people. She was very nice, but she wouldn't bring her son out. She said he was a Trump supporter, but he wouldn't be happy to see us. So it was kind of funny how that worked. But as soon as people would see him so angry, and as soon as they saw, I tried to cover my car in Trump flags so they would be a little less, furious when they saw us coming. It was pretty funny. And I wish I could see Matt's comments because I don't know what he's saying, but I can tell that he's probably a lunatic. All right. So anyway, guys, last thing I want to talk about really quick, and then I've got to run. I've got a lot of work to do today, is, again, Elon Musk, since we're already talking about Elon Musk. Elon Musk, as you know, he had Neuralink. And I'll tell you, it's been instrumental in so many people being able to walk again. I know a lot of people don't like Neuralink. They think, oh, he's putting some kind of transplant in a person's body. I can guarantee you, Elon Musk wants to do nothing but good for people. I know a lot of people find him a very controversial character, but he wants to do nothing but good for people. Now he's come up with a new implant that will, guess what? It'll cause blind people to see again. So I'm going to play his little video here.
Is blind sight, which will enable those who have total loss of vision, including if they've lost their eyes or the optic nerve, or maybe have never seen, were blind, even blind from birth, to be able to see again. Initially low resolution, but ultimately very high resolution, and then in multiple wavelengths. So you could be like Geordi LaForge in Star Trek, and you can see in radar, you can see in infrared, ultraviolet, superhuman capabilities, cybernetic enhancement, essentially. And then along the way, this should help us understand a lot more about consciousness. What does it mean to be a conscious creature? We'll understand vastly more about the nature of consciousness as a result of this. And then ultimately, I think this helps mitigate the civilizational risk of artificial intelligence.
All right. So Elon Musk doing good things, but I have some breaking news here. Donald Trump said 700 boxes of ballots were seized by the FBI when they were at the Fulton County election office. Now, I don't know what that means. I would hope that they weren't dumb enough. I mean, of course, there's a lot of dumb people out there to save ballots that they cheated with. But either way, I guess the Trump administration is going to look through those. I was going to see if there's any other breaking news today. I don't see anything. Keep an eye on the price of silver. We've talked about silver a lot on this show. And the bionic eye. I know Elon Musk is doing some absolutely fantastic things. No question about it. He wants to improve the lives of all. And let's see, Jeannie says, Dems have a plan, always yakking, never ever pulling through for the American people. That's why I switched. Oh, Jeannie, I had no idea that you switched. Let's see, Timothy, good morning. Replying to Matt. I wish I could see Matt's comments. Oh, wait, like social media did with Republicans in 2020, shaking my head. So it's okay when it fits your narrative, but not okay when it doesn't. Make that make sense. Yeah, after the show, I'll go through and I'll figure out how to get Matt off the show. We don't need that. Javier, you're welcome to join us anytime. I have no problem with liberals or Democrats. I have plenty of friends who are liberals and Democrats. As a matter of fact, half of my family hates Donald Trump and absolutely, loved Joe Biden, or they're just non-political at all. And you know what? We just don't talk about politics for the most part, or we try to have a reasonable conversation about politics. I have no problem, with people coming onto the show saying, hey, I don't agree with you. I don't agree with you. But when people come on the show and they're calling names and acting a fool, well, guess what? Then they don't belong on the show. If you're going to come on, you're going to comment, keep it within reason. That's all I ever ask. Keep it within reason. As a matter of fact, a guy that I work with, he's actually a client of mine, and he knows, trust me, he knows how I feel. I know how he feels. He continues to employ me and for, working some of his security for some of his gigs. And I'll tell you, I keep wanting to get him on the show. Now, this guy is a diehard liberal. We get along fantastically. He's a really good person, as a lot of the liberals and Democrat friends I have are, but he's the same way. He's not out in the streets protesting. He's not going to a violent protest with a gun. He's not impeding officers. He's not blocking officers. And I can assure you, he does not like what's happening, but at the same time, guess what? He's staying home, because that's how you survive. There's ways to get what you want without actually going out and creating violence. You can go out and do what I did. I very peacefully went out, and guess what? I got out the early vote for Donald Trump. I did it peacefully. And you can do the same thing. If you don't like Donald Trump, you want somebody else to win. Who the Democrats have up next, I don't know. Hopefully it's not Gavin Newsom. If it is, I guess we'll all have to get rid of our gas appliances. All right, guys. Well, that's it for me. Kim says Javier is respectful. It's all about respect. You're absolutely right. I don't care if Javier is a liberal, a Democrat, going out to peacefully protesting. I don't have any problem with any of that stuff. As a matter of fact, I encourage open dialogue between it. We'll never learn in the past. Now on this show, it's just me. I wish I had co-hosts, but it's just me. On my prior shows, if you guys recall, there were times where I faced a lot of opponents. I remember a time when Vic and Eric hated Trump. Neither one of them wanted Trump to win. And some of you might remember that too. We argued nonstop. Now, Vic is a conservative. Eric is kind of in the middle. And Chris, of course, is conservative and did like Trump, but he kind of stayed out of things. And we would all go round and round, and sometimes it became very heated, quite honestly. It was very heated at times. And eventually, Vic kind of came around a little bit, and Eric was still kind of in the middle of, not really sure. He was kind of stuck between liberal and conservative. But I always welcome that kind of discussion, because you know what? That's how we learn things. And really, and I will always say, I consider myself a middle of the roader. I'm not a Republican, definitely not a Democrat. I am a conservative, but I'm not a super far right conservative. I'm a constitutionalist, I'm a Christian. But there are some issues that I feel like I'm a little bit more liberal on. I don't have a problem with gay rights. I don't have a problem with people being trans. I have a problem when trans power movements come around, and they're mean and hateful, and they expect everybody to be like them. I have a problem with little boys playing girls' sports. I have a problem with men playing women's sports. I have a problem with little boys going into the girls' locker rooms or the girls' restrooms. I don't think any of that should take place, but like abortion. I think most of us could sit down and, believe it or not, one of the most heated topics there is, and agree on abortion, because abortion, what Democrats seem to fail to ignore, because they say, oh, my body, my choice, blah, blah, blah. Well, the problem is with abortion is that they use it in place of birth control. That's the problem. I feel like if a woman gets raped, and now this is where some of us are going to disagree, because if you're very, very pro-life, you're probably not going to agree with me. Now, I feel like if a woman gets raped and she goes in that day and gets like the abortion pill, I know that's terrible because it's still murder. So I know a lot of you aren't going to agree with me. I don't have as much of an issue with that. If there's an incest situation or a 10-year-old gets pregnant, I don't have as much of an issue with that type of abortion, something that's taken care of like right off the bat. However, what happens is that people use abortion as birth control. Instead of using condoms or abstinence or taking birth control pills, whatever it is you need to do to protect yourself, that's when a woman should be protecting their body, and the men have, of course, they play their role too. But the problem is we have about 500,000 abortions that take place in this country every single year. And a lot of those, and trust me, I've read the studies, a lot of those are repeat abortions. The same woman getting multiple abortions. I've read cases where women have had, 13, 14 abortions in over a period of time. That's wrong. You're using abortion in place of birth control. And that's when I have a problem. But if you really sit down and talk to a lot of Democrats, they will actually agree with you. Yeah, we shouldn't use abortion as birth control. It's another story. We'll get into that another day. And let's see, Timothy says it's okay to have your opinion, but you can't blatantly shove it down someone's throat. Right, Timothy. And that's kind of on, both sides of things. Both sides can say that, of course. And let's see, Javier says, I think that's what made me so sad about Kirk's death, because even though I disagreed on many things, what he stood for at the end of the day was the exchange of ideals that our country was founded on. Both him and Pretti should be alive today. Well, Charlie Kirk I think, now this is just my opinion, is that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and we could go down this rabbit hole on another day. People get very angry at me, even conservatives, when I say this. I personally think Charlie Kirk was assassinated because not only did he get Donald Trump those early votes and Donald Trump won the election, but Charlie Kirk, he owned a super PAC. It was one of the biggest super PACs, up and coming super PACs that anyone has ever seen, and it was continuing to grow, and he was becoming very influential. And Charlie Kirk said, despite all the threats against him, that even though the big election was over and Donald Trump did win, he was going to ensure that we won many future elections to come. And he was going by the old Democrat strategy where, hey, I'm going to start at the bottom. He's going to start out in these different municipalities, and he's going to make sure conservatives win in those smaller elections. And then he's going to work his way up, from school boards. He's going to support those folks to mayors, city council people, all the way up the line. And I'll tell you, I think there's a lot of people out there who realized how powerful Charlie Kirk would someday be. And I think they realized that the tides were getting ready to turn, where not only did we outsmart them in the 2024 election, but we were going to outsmart them in all future elections. And I don't care what anybody says, the Democrat Party is not your typical party. It's not just your typical political party. It is a regime, very strong regime, just like you see in other countries. We don't think about it here in the United States in that way, but it is a regime. And they've been in power for a very, very long time. And they're not going to give up their power so easily. Now, that's just my opinion. I agree. Most people aren't going to agree with me on that. Now, Renee Good's a different story. Renee Good did, whether she intended to hit the officer or didn't, it doesn't really matter. The fact is she did hit him. She should have never been in that situation to begin with. And I think that's what it comes down to. You should never be in that situation. And we can say the same thing for Charlie Kirk, quite honestly. And Charlie Kirk knew that. Charlie Kirk knew that. He had security everywhere he went. He knew that starting this super PAC, he knew that going to these public speaking engagements put him in danger. It did. It absolutely did put him in danger. I'm glad he did what he did, of course, but it did put him in danger. And we could easily say, well, if Charlie Kirk, wasn't out fighting for the American people, if he wasn't an outspoken Christian, if he was just some soccer dad that stayed at home, he'd still be alive. And that's also true. He put himself in that position. I put myself in a position. That's why when people threaten me, I'm like, okay, it comes with the territory. I'm up and I'm talking about controversial issues and people want to threaten me, oh, well, if I didn't want people to threaten me, I guess I wouldn't come back on the show again, would I? I'd close down all my social media pages and move out to the country somewhere. We put ourselves in different situations and we know what's coming our way. Now for Pretti, unfortunately for Pretti, Pretti came to a protest armed. He was combatant with officers many times. We see that with the video we played today, which is not AI. It's a real video that's been confirmed now by many sources. And when you put yourself in that position where you come to a situation and you're armed and you're going to be tussling with police officers, you're probably going to get shot. The odds are actually really good for it. You're probably going to get shot. And he had to have known that. And I think he did know that. And I think that's why his parents warned him that, hey, if you're going to go to these protests, stay away from law enforcement. Because if, I'm sure the conversation probably went further that that's just something you can't do. And in my opinion, Renee Good and Alex Pretti, I'm not saying that either of them deserve to die, but I am certainly saying they put themselves in a position where they have a high probability of being killed. And you don't intercept yourself. You don't put yourself in the middle of law enforcement and an investigation. You just don't do it. You just don't do it. Let's see here. Carl says, what are we going to do today, brain? Same thing we do every day. Pinky, try to take over the world. Let's do our best, Carl. Let's do our best. And let's see. Timothy says, go sit down somewhere. Oh, you're talking to, I'm not sure who you're talking. Go sit down somewhere. You're not watching it to see the facts. How about you go see the body cam footage? Let me guess. That was AI too. I'm not sure who Timothy you're talking to. We know the video is not AI. We know that Alex Pretti unfortunately put himself in that situation, but I don't know who you're talking to. And Paul says, be honest, how far are you on the background check on Matt? I can't even see Matt's comments. So please, if you're out there, screenshot Matt's comments, send them to me. I don't see them. I will have them checked out. I guess usually the way I think it works normally is when I block somebody in the comment section, they're blocked from the show altogether. You guys can't see them and I can't see them. But I guess that's not the case. Maybe only I can't see them. I'm going to have to look into that. But please do something for me. Sherry, if you will, or Jeannie, one of you guys that are watching, screenshot his comments. And trust me, it'll take me about 2 minutes to figure out who Matt is, if he's a real person, where he lives, what his mom's name is, if he has kids, and everything else about him. I can probably do that in less than 2 minutes. So I'll be happy to do that. And let's see here. Jeannie says, when you butt your nose in somebody else's business, that's on you. You got that right. All right, guys, it is time for me to go. I have got to get to work. I'm far over where I expected to be today. But that's what I do. I talk way too much. And I love reading all of your comments. All right, guys, I will be looking for those screenshots from Matt so I can figure out what Matt's deal is. I have a feeling his social media account will be deleted and you'll no longer see Matt on Facebook again. He'll have to create a new account. But I do hope you guys have a really good day. And I unfortunately will not be here again tomorrow. As I said, duty calls. I thought maybe I could get through a week without it, but I'm happy since I'm self-employed. I'm very happy when duty calls. So I've got some work to do. But I will look forward to talking to you all on Monday. We'll have Colonel Joe Adams joining us on Monday. Of course, I will be posting news as it comes up throughout social media. As always, we'll be trying to keep everybody up to date. Thanks, guys. I do hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you all on Monday. Have a good weekend, everyone. And again, I'm Tabitha Hassell.